worries, no worries. Very interesting, and think we continue on the Fed has no idea what it's doing issue. Speaking about the Fed and thing number three, which I know is going to probably be similar conversation. The Fed highlights its lack of confidence. Interesting quote coming from Powell. I'll let you touch on that here in a minute.
Yeah, so the moment in so typically what happens for those of you who are, not spending your afternoons watching the Federal Reserve, which, why anybody wouldn't want to spend your Wednesday afternoon watching the Federal Reserve, I don't know. But the way it works is the Federal Reserve, when they conclude their meetings on Wednesdays at 2 p.m., they put out a press release, and that press release is usually around 3 or 4 pages, something like that. And everybody looks at it to see where they've changed the language. And they're also 4 times a year. There's the dot plot, and they have some other charts they make available in the exhibits. And then at 2:30, Powell goes to his press conference and he stands in front of the reporters and he delivers some prepared remarks that don't take that long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. And then he'll spend the rest of the hour answering questions from reporters. And, the nutty thing about this is every reporter basically asks a different version of the same question, which is, when are you going to reduce interest rates? And, Powell tells them he's data driven. He tries to give them straightforward answers, and he does a really good job trying not to look annoyed. He does not always succeed at that, but in fairness to Powell, Rob, what would you do if 24 reporters all asked you 24 versions of the exact same question? At some point you might get a little frustrated. But these events can get a little humorous at times, and somebody asked him a question. So they were looking at the PCE. And the Fed is projecting a higher PCE at year end than it is now. And someone said, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, we thought you were getting inflation under control. You're actually projecting more inflation. And for people who don't follow this constantly, the PCE is another measure of consumer spending. Think about it as just a different way of measuring inflation. They're all different metrics that people look at. And Powell's answer was fascinating. He said, now, do we have high confidence that that's right? Referring to the Fed's projections. And he answered his own question, no. Holy crap. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, in a public press conference, flat out said that the Fed does not have high confidence that their projections are right. Now, that sounds really bad, but Rob, let's give Jerome Powell a round of applause for telling the truth in public. One of the things that I had DKI intern Andrew Brown do a few months ago for one of our monthly letters was he pulled the results of every Fed dot plot for the last 4 years or so, and we made graphs from them. And the thing that we realized was as little as 6 to 18 months ahead of the end of the year, the Fed was off on their projection of the federal funds rate by hundreds of basis points. They're not even close. And it's important to point out that the thing that the Fed controls, they can't control inflation. They can't control dollar creation. They can't control government spending. They control the Fed funds rate. In other words, they can't predict the one thing they control 6 to 18 months out. And so what Powell says, yeah, we really don't know what the PCE is going to be at year end. We give you these projections, but we don't have confidence in it. I mean, he's right. They're not capable of projecting anything. So let's at least give him the credit for telling the truth in public.
Yeah, that was actually what led to my question, based on takeaway is how much control, does the Fed actually have when you consider that one, their lack of confidence in their numbers, and then two, what you were just referencing on our last thing, the out of control government spending, right? And is this an argument for the abolish the Fed side that in reality they don't have any at all in terms of control of what can or cannot be done?
There's no question in my mind. We would be better off getting rid of the Federal Reserve and having the market set the rate of interest, which is the most important metric in finance. There's nothing more important than setting the price of time and risk. I don't think we need the Federal Reserve to do that. The reason it's so difficult for the Fed to predict, there are a number of reasons. One, the data they're fed is nonsense and lies. We've talked ad nauseum on this channel about how the CPI is manipulated and deliberately inaccurate. We've talked a lot about the employment numbers. And we just saw a month or two ago, the Philadelphia Fed realized, oh, we lost 800,000 jobs. Literally, they counted 800,000 jobs that didn't exist. We regularly see revisions that are much greater than the amount of the beat, right? The government data is constantly revised and usually in the same direction. So they're working with flawed data. Any policy measures that they have tends to work on a lag and is indeterminate. You don't know. In my opinion, the most important thing is what we were just talking about. So if the Fed is trying to tighten business conditions and try to take some of the air out of the economy, trying to use higher interest rates to slow the economy, which is normally what would work, and Congress is spending, they're throwing trillions of dollars of stimulus into the market. And then, Secretary Yellen, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, is monetizing all of that. Well, that's a lot of dollar creation and that's a lot of spending. And it's all just excess demand creation. They're pulling demand forward using debt spending. That's offsetting everything the Federal Reserve is doing. So all of this is not actually Powell's fault. And as much as I've always been on team and the Fed, this is a situation where it's at this point, it's really Congress causing the problem. And again, they're not going to fix it. So we can get angry about it. That's not going to be effective. We can vote. I encourage people to go vote, but that's also not going to fix this particular problem. It may fix other problems. You may get policies you want. The thing that you should do to deal with this, because getting upset isn't going to fix it, voting isn't going to fix this. The thing that you should do is prepare for more inflation. Now, do I know what inflation is going to be over the next 6 months? No. But over the next 6 years, you better expect the purchasing power of the dollar to decline.